The words sliced through the crowded hallway of Lincoln High School like a thunderclap. You think you're some kind of saint, sharing your lunch with the janitor? You're just showing off. The voice belonged to Madison Hayes, Queen Bee of the senior class, her perfectly manicured nails pointing accusingly at Sophia Martinez, who stood frozen with a wrapped sandwich still warm in her hands, and Mr. Robert, the school janitor, standing quietly beside her with his worn lunch bag. Sophia blinked, her dark eyes wide with confusion. "Excuse me?" Madison's eyes were cold as ice, drilling into Sophia like she'd committed some unforgivable social crime. "Step away from him, now. It's embarrassing for all of us." Sophia lifted her hand slightly, the sandwich still between them. Wait. He forgot his lunch at home. I'm just sharing mine." "We eat together sometimes." Before she could finish, Madison's hand flew forward, not quite a slap, but a sharp push that sent Sophia stumbling backward. Her backpack hit the lockers with a metallic clang that echoed through the hallway. The sandwich fell to the floor, its contents spilling across the linoleum. "No!" Mr. Robert cried out, his weathered face creasing with concern. "Don't hurt Sophia. She's kind to me." "Kind?" Madison scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. "She's using you for her college application essay. How I Helped the Poor Janitor. Classic." Gasps burst from the crowd of students that had begun to gather. A freshman whispered, "Did Madison just push her?" Another voice, "Why does she care so much about Sophia eating with the janitor?" Phones came out, screens lighting up. Instagram stories were already being posted. Sophia pushed herself up from the lockers, her cheek red from where it had hit the metal. "I've been eating lunch with Mr. Robert for 3 years, she said, her voice shaking slightly. "Since freshman year when I saw him sitting alone. We're friends." Madison pointed straight at her, voice rising like a prosecutor. "Friends? Is that what you call manipulating a lonely old man for your personal gain? You probably take selfies with him for your volunteer hours." "I don't." Sophia's voice cracked, her hands trembling as she bent to pick up the ruined sandwich. He tells me stories about his family. We talk about books." The crowd murmured, torn between the popular Madison and the quiet Sophia. Mr. Robert, the man everyone passed in the hallways without a second glance, stood there with tears in his eyes. "Sophia reads to me sometimes," he said softly. "She shares her books. Why is that wrong?" Madison rolled her eyes. "God, this is pathetic." She turned to leave, but not before adding, "Stay away from her, janitor. She's not your friend. She's just another fake trying to look good." The crowd dispersed slowly, leaving Sophia and Mr. Robert standing in the mess of the dropped sandwich. Sophia's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "I'm sorry," Mr. Robert said, pulling paper towels from his cart. "I cause you trouble." "No," Sophia said firmly, helping him clean. "You don't cause anything. Madison's just—" She trailed off, not finding the right word for the cruelty she'd just witnessed. 3 years earlier, Robert Sullivan had taken the janitor position at Lincoln High, not because he needed the money, but because he needed the purpose. His wife, Elena, had passed away 6 months prior, and the silence of their empty house had become unbearable. Their son, Michael, was overseas, building his career in educational administration. Robert had told him he was fine, that he didn't need to come back, that he should focus on his doctorate and his future. But the truth was, Robert was drowning in loneliness. The janitor job gave him routine, human contact, and a reason to get up each morning. He'd been a high school principal himself once, in another state, another life, before Elena got sick and he'd retired early to care for her. Now, pushing a mop and emptying trash cans felt like a strange form of meditation, a way to stay connected to the world of education he'd once loved. He'd noticed Sophia Martinez on his 3rd day. She was sitting alone in the cafeteria, reading a worn paperback while eating a homemade sandwich. Something about her solitude reminded him of his younger self, back when books were his only real friends. When she'd looked up and caught him watching, instead of looking away like most students did, she'd smiled and waved. The next day, she'd approached him during lunch. "Mr. Robert," she'd said, reading his name tag, "would you like to sit? I brought extra cookies. My abuela always makes too many." That simple invitation had changed everything. Sophia had been navigating her own struggles at Lincoln High. She was brilliant, but quiet, more comfortable with Jane Austen than with her peers. Her parents worked double shifts at the local hospital, and most afternoons she went home to an empty apartment. She did her homework, made dinner for when her parents returned, and lost herself in books. In Mr. Robert, she found something unexpected, a kindred spirit. He'd read everything she mentioned, could discuss Steinbeck and Morrison with equal passion, and told her stories about his travels with his late wife that made faraway places seem real and possible. He never talked down to her, never treated her like a child. He spoke to her like an equal, like her thoughts mattered. Neither of them knew that Michael Sullivan was about to return to the States. Neither of them knew he'd accepted a position as the new principal of Lincoln High, wanting to surprise his father by being close again. Neither of them knew that their quiet friendship was about to become the center of a storm that would shake the entire school. The afternoon of the hallway incident, Sophia sat in the library, her safe haven, trying to focus on her calculus homework. Her phone buzzed with notifications she didn't want to check. Madison's followers had been active, she could tell. The whispers followed her through the halls like a shadow. "Hey," a gentle voice said. She looked up to see Jamie Chen, her lab partner from AP Biology, holding 2 cups from the coffee cart. "Thought you could use this." Sophia accepted the cup gratefully. "You don't think I'm—" she started, then stopped. "Using Mr. Robert for college applications?" Jamie finished. "No, I've seen you two together. That's real friendship. Madison's just—" "Cruel?" Sophia offered. "Insecure," Jamie corrected. "Her dad's on the school board. She thinks everyone operates like her family does. Everything's about appearances and advantage." They sat in companionable silence for a moment before Jamie added, "Mr. Robert seems nice. My grandmother says the janitors and lunch ladies know more about a school than anyone else." Sophia smiled sadly. "He's more than nice. He's probably one of the smartest people in this building. Did you know he speaks 4 languages? He learned them traveling with his wife." Jamie's eyes widened. "Really? Really? He just— people don't bother to know him. They see the uniform and the mop and that's it." That evening, Sophia found Mr. Robert in the East Wing, methodically cleaning classroom windows. The setting sun cast long shadows through the glass, painting everything golden. "You shouldn't eat with me anymore," he said without turning around. "I don't want to cause you problems." Sophia set down her backpack with a decisive thump. "No." He turned, surprised by her firmness. "No," she repeated. "I'm not letting Madison Hayes dictate who I can be friends with. You're one of the few real people in this place." Mr. Roberts' eyes glistened. "Sophia, you have your whole future ahead of you. Don't let an old janitor—" "Stop," she interrupted. "You're not just anything. You're my friend. You're the person who recommended I read The Book Thief and changed how I see the world. You're the one who told me about the scholarship opportunity that my counselor missed. You're the person who makes this place bearable." He was quiet for a long moment, then said, "My son would like you. You remind me of him at your age. All fire and conviction." "Tell me about him," Sophia said, settling onto a desk like she always did when they talked. Robert smiled, the kind of smile that carried years of pride and pain mixed together. Michael was always going to change the world. Even as a boy, he'd see something unfair and couldn't rest until he fixed it. He's in education now, Like I used to be. You were a teacher? Robert hesitated, then nodded. Something like that, a long time ago. Sophia wanted to ask more, but she'd learned that Mr. Robert shared his past in small doses, like medicine too strong to take all at once. Instead, she pulled out her lunch bag. I brought extra sandwiches, peanut butter and banana, your favorite. He chuckled. How did you know? You mentioned it once. You said your wife used to make them. They ate in comfortable silence, the empty classroom feeling less lonely with two people in it. Neither of them noticed the figure walking past the doorway, stopping in surprise at the sight of them. Michael Sullivan, arriving a day early to surprise his father, stood frozen in the hallway, watching his dad share a simple meal with a teenage girl who looked at him like he hung the moon. The next morning arrived gray and drizzling, matching the mood at Lincoln High. The Madison incident had divided the school into camps, those who supported Sophia's friendship with the janitor, those who found it weird, and those who just wanted the drama to continue for entertainment. Sophia arrived early, as always, her hood pulled up against the rain. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying yesterday's confrontation. As she approached her locker, she found a note taped to it. Your little charity case won't save you. Stay in your lane. M. She crumpled it up, anger finally overtaking hurt. But before she could throw it away, she noticed Mr. Robert at the end of the hall, his shoulders more slumped than usual. Something was different. Mr. Robert? She called out, walking toward him. He looked up and she saw something she'd never seen in his eyes before. Fear. Sophia, there's something I need to tell you. All students and staff, please report to the auditorium for an emergency assembly. The intercom crackled to life, cutting him off. Attendance is mandatory. The hallways filled with confused students. Sophia stayed close to Mr. Robert as they made their way to the auditorium. She could feel the stares, hear the whispers. Madison and her crew were already there, front and center, looking smugger than usual. Vice Principal Washington stood at the podium, looking unusually formal. Students and staff, I have an important announcement. As you know, Principal Anderson retired at the end of last year, and we've been searching for the right replacement. Today, I'm pleased to introduce Lincoln High's new principal, Dr. Michael Sullivan. A tall man in an impeccable navy suit walked onto the stage. He had Robert's eyes, the same gentle curve to his mouth, but carried himself with an authority that commanded immediate attention. Sophia heard Mr. Robert's sharp intake of breath beside her. Good morning, Lincoln High, Dr. Sullivan said, his voice carrying easily through the auditorium. I'm excited to be here, to be part of this community. But before we talk about the future, I want to address something that came to my attention yesterday. The auditorium went dead silent. I witnessed something that deeply concerns me. The treatment of our support staff, our janitors, cafeteria workers, security guards, reflects the character of our school. These people are not invisible. They are not beneath you. They are essential members of our community who deserve respect. Madison shifted uncomfortably in her seat. I also witnessed something that gave me hope, Dr. Sullivan continued. A student who understands that kindness isn't about grand gestures or recognition. It's about seeing people, really seeing them and treating them with dignity. His eyes found Sophia in the crowd, and she felt her heart skip. Which brings me to a personal note, he said, his voice softening. The janitor you students pass every day, Mr. Robert Sullivan, is my father. The auditorium erupted. Gasps, whispers, a few phones dropping. Madison's face went pale as paper. My father, Dr. I. Sullivan continued, raising his voice over the noise, is a former principal himself, with 30 years in education. He has a master's degree in literature and a doctorate in educational leadership. He took this job after my mother passed, not because he needed work, but because he needed purpose. And in these halls, he found something unexpected, a true friend. He looked directly at Sophia now. "Ms. Martinez, would you please stand?" Sophia's legs felt like jelly, but she stood, aware of every eye in the room on her. "This young woman," Dr. Sullivan said, "has spent 3 years showing us what character looks like, not for college applications, not for social media, not for any gain whatsoever. She befriended my father simply because she saw a person eating alone and thought he might like company. That is the kind of student, the kind of person I want Lincoln High to celebrate." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Ms. Hayes," he said, and Madison's head snapped up. "Please see me in my office after this assembly. We need to discuss your understanding of appropriate behavior and the consequences of harassment." Madison looked like she might faint. "To everyone else," Dr. Sullivan continued, "let this be clear. Bullying, harassment, and cruelty have no place here. Not toward students, not toward staff, not toward anyone. We are a community, and we will act like one." He smiled then, the same warm smile Sophia knew from Mr. Robert. "Now, let me properly introduce someone. Dad, would you come up here?" Mr. Robert, Dr. Robert Sullivan, walked slowly to the stage, his janitor's uniform suddenly looking like something else entirely, like a disguise he'd been wearing. When he reached the microphone, he cleared his throat. "Many of you know me as Mr. Robert, the janitor. That's who I've been for 3 years, and I've been proud to serve this school. But my son is right. I am also other things: a father, a widower, a former educator, a reader, a traveler. We all contain multitudes, as Walt Whitman said." He found Sophia in the crowd. "Sophia Martinez reminded me of that when I'd forgotten. She didn't see a janitor. She saw a person. And in return, she let me see her, not as a student to be talked down to, but as a friend to share ideas with. She saved me from drowning in my grief, though she never knew it." Sophia felt tears rolling down her cheeks. "So thank you, Sophia, for the shared lunches, the book recommendations, the conversations about everything and nothing, for treating me like I mattered when I'd forgotten that I did." The applause started slowly, then built to a roar. Students stood, some crying, some cheering. Madison sank lower in her seat, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. After the assembly, Sophia found herself in a whirlwind. Students who'd never spoken to her wanted to be friends. Teachers looked at her with new respect. Local news stations called for interviews. But she escaped it all, finding Mr. Robert, Dr. Sullivan, in their usual spot, the empty classroom in the East Wing. "You could have told me," she said softly. He smiled sadly. "Would it have changed anything? Would you have been as comfortable sharing your thoughts with Dr. Sullivan, former principal, as you were with Mr. Robert, janitor?" She considered this. "Maybe not at first, but eventually yes, because you're still you." "And you're still you," he said. "Don't let this change that. Don't let the attention make you into something you're not." "I won't," she promised. Then, with a small smile, "So do I call you Dr. Sullivan now?" "You call me what you always have," he said firmly. "I'm still Mr. Robert to you. I'm still your friend." Michael appeared in the doorway. "Sorry to interrupt. Sophia, I wanted to thank you personally. My father's letters over the past 2 years have been filled with stories about you. You brought light back into his life when I couldn't be here to do it myself." Sophia blushed. "He did the same for me. This place can be lonely." "Not anymore," Michael said firmly. "I have big plans for Lincoln High, and they start with recognizing the people who make it special." "Sophia, how would you feel about starting a mentorship program? Pairing students with staff members, all staff members, for genuine connections." Sophia's eyes lit up. "Really? Really? My father always said the best ideas come from students. Will you help me design it?" She nodded eagerly, then looked at Mr. Robert. Will you be my first official mentor? He laughed, the sound rich and full. I thought I already was. The weeks that followed transformed Lincoln High. The mentorship program launched with overwhelming participation. Madison Hayes, after a suspension and mandatory counseling, surprised everyone by genuinely apologizing to Sophia and requesting to join the program. She was paired with Mrs. Chen from the cafeteria and discovered a shared love of cooking that no one could have predicted. The local news did run stories, but Sophia declined most interviews. The one she did accept focused not on her, but on the importance of seeing people beyond their roles. The segment went viral, not because of drama, but because of its simple truth. Everyone has a story worth hearing. Mr. Robert continued his janitor duties, but now students greeted him by name, asked him about books, sought his advice. He started a lunchtime book club that quickly became one of the most popular activities at school. The room was always packed, students sitting on desks, windowsills, and the floor, discussing everything from ancient philosophy to contemporary poetry. Dr. Sullivan implemented changes that reflected the values his father and Sophia had demonstrated. The school's mission statement was rewritten with input from all staff members. The hierarchy that had allowed people like Madison to terrorize others was systematically dismantled. Academic achievement remained important, but character became equally valued. One afternoon, months later, Sophia was studying in the library when Jamie Chen rushed up to her. "You have to see this," Jamie said, pulling up her phone. It was a video from a national education conference. Dr. Sullivan was on stage, presenting about transformational leadership. On the screen behind him was a photo, Sophia and Mr. O. Robert, eating lunch together, both laughing at something, completely unaware of the camera. "This," Dr. Sullivan was saying, "is what education should be about. Not test scores, not college admissions, not competition. It should be about human connection, about seeing each other fully, about kindness that asks for nothing in return." Sophia smiled, remembering that day. "Mr." Robert had been telling her about the time he and Elena got lost in Rome and ended up at a local family's dinner table, not speaking a word of Italian but somehow communicating through laughter and hand gestures. "You're famous," Jamie said. "No," Sophia corrected. "The idea is famous. The idea that everyone matters." Spring arrived with a burst of color at Lincoln High. The mentorship program had evolved into something bigger than anyone expected. It wasn't just students paired with staff anymore. It was a web of connections crossing all traditional boundaries. The captain of the football team learned chess from Mr. Wilson, the night janitor. The valedictorian discovered a passion for gardening with Mr. Lopez from maintenance. Madison Hayes had started a cooking blog with Mrs. Chen that had gained thousands of followers. On a warm May afternoon, Sophia sat in what everyone now called Mr. Robert's room, the same classroom where they'd shared so many lunches, but now it was full of people. The book club had just finished discussing The Alchemist, and the debate was lively. "It's about the journey, not the destination," argued Alex, a sophomore who'd joined after his basketball season ended. "But if Santiago had stayed home, he would have found the treasure anyway," countered Rebecca, usually too shy to speak in class, but confident here. "Mr. Robert listened, smiling, occasionally throwing in a question that deepened the discussion. Sophia watched him, seeing how alive he looked compared to that first day she'd invited him to sit with her. After the meeting, as students filtered out, Mr. Robert and Sophia cleaned up together, falling into their old rhythm. "Your son's speech at the conference is at 2 million views," Sophia mentioned casually. Mr. Robert chuckled. "He always was dramatic. Gets it from his mother." "He's proud of you," Sophia said, "and so am I. For being a janitor, for being yourself, for showing me that dignity isn't about what you do, but how you treat people while you're doing it." They were interrupted by a knock. Dr. Sullivan entered with a woman Sophia didn't recognize, professional-looking, with kind eyes and a press badge. "Sophia, Mr. Robert, this is Amanda Torres from the National Education Journal. She's writing a feature on our program." Amanda shook their hands warmly. "I've heard so much about you both, the friendship that changed the school." Sophia and Mr. Robert exchanged glances, a whole conversation in a look. "It wasn't just our friendship," Sophia said carefully. "It was the choice to see each other. Anyone could have made that choice." "But you did," Amanda pressed. "Why?" Sophia thought for a moment. "My grandmother always said that angels don't always come with wings. Sometimes they come with mops and tired eyes and stories that need to be heard." Mr. Robert looked like he had stories. "And Sophia," Mr. Robert added, "looked like someone who would listen." Amanda scribbled notes furiously. "The program has been replicated in 12 schools across the state. Did you expect that?" "No," they said in unison, then laughed. "We just wanted to eat lunch," Mr. Robert explained. "Everything else, that came from other people deciding that connection mattered more than convention." As the interview continued, Dr. Sullivan watched from the doorway. His father looked years younger than when he'd surprised him that day. The grief was still there. It always would be, but it no longer consumed him. And Sophia, the quiet girl who'd saved his father with simple kindness, had become a leader without losing her gentleness. After the journalist left, the three of them stood in the classroom as the sun set through the windows, painting everything gold. "Next year will be different," Sophia said quietly. She'd been accepted to Yale with a full scholarship, something that had made local news. "Different doesn't mean over," Mr. Robert said. "You'll write, I'll write back, and you'll come home with new books to recommend." "And new stories to share," Sophia added. Dr. Sullivan cleared his throat. "Actually, about that, Sophia, the school board has approved something unusual. They want to name the mentorship program after you." Sophia's eyes widened. "What? No, that's happening, Dr. Sullivan said firmly. "The Sophia Martinez Connections program, because you started it all." "I shared a sandwich," Sophia protested. "You shared humanity," Mr. Robert corrected, "in a place that had forgotten what that looked like." Graduation day arrived with unusual fanfare. National media had picked up the story, and Lincoln High's transformation had become a symbol of something larger. But in the midst of it all, Sophia and Mr. Robert maintained their quiet ritual. They met for lunch one last time as student and janitor. The cafeteria was buzzing with pre-graduation energy, but they'd found a quiet corner. "I got you something," Sophia said, pulling out a wrapped package. Mr. Robert opened it carefully. Inside was a leather-bound journal and a first edition of To Kill a Mockingbird, his favorite book, which he'd mentioned once in passing. "Sophia, this is too much." "Read the inscription," she said softly. He opened the book. In careful handwriting, it read, "To Mr. Robert, thank you for teaching me that courage is when you know you're licked before you begin, but you begin anyway and see it through. Thank you for beginning with me. With love and gratitude, Sophia." His eyes filled with tears. "I have something for you, too." He handed her a small box. Inside was an antique compass on a chain. "It was Elena's," he said quietly. "She always said it didn't point north. It pointed toward home. I want you to have it, so you remember you always have a home here." Sophia clutched it to her chest, tears streaming down her face. That evening, as Sophia gave her valedictorian speech, she wore the compass around her neck. She talked about unexpected friendships, about the danger of assumptions, about the power of simply seeing people. "We spend so much time looking up," she said, "trying to reach the next achievement, the next goal. But sometimes, the most important moments happen when we look around, when we see who's sitting alone, who's been invisible, Who needs a friend? She found Mr. Robert in the crowd, standing now with Dr. Sullivan, both beaming with pride. Mr. Robert taught me that everyone has a story. Madison taught me that hurt people, but they can also heal. Dr. Sullivan taught me that change is possible when leaders have courage. And Lincoln High taught me that a community isn't built on hierarchies. It's built on connections. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Later, at the reception, Sophia found herself surrounded by family, friends, teachers, all congratulating her. But she broke away, finding Mr. Robert outside, looking at the stars. "Elena would have loved you," he said without preamble. "Tell me about her," Sophia said, sitting beside him on the bench. So he did. He talked about their travels, their dreams, their quiet Sunday mornings. He talked about her illness, about holding her hand as she slipped away, about the darkness that followed. "And then," he said, "a 17-year-old girl offered me a cookie and asked me to sit. And slowly, very slowly, I remembered why Elena loved people so much, because of their capacity for unexpected grace." Sophia leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'll miss you." "No, you won't," he said gently. "You'll be too busy changing the world, but I'll be here, saving your letters, boring Michael with stories about your achievements." They sat in comfortable silence, two unlikely friends who had found each other in the most ordinary of circumstances and created something extraordinary. 6 months later, Sophia was deep in her studies at Yale when her phone rang. It was Dr. Sullivan. "Sophia, I'm calling with news. The Department of Education wants to make the Connections program a national initiative. They want you to speak at the launch." Sophia nearly dropped her phone. "Are you serious?" "Completely. But there's more. They want Dad to co-present with you, the student and the janitor who started it all." "He'll hate the attention," Sophia laughed. "He'll do it for you," Dr. Sullivan said. "You know he will." And he did. 6 weeks later, Sophia and Mr. Robert stood before an audience of educators, policymakers, and media from across the country. Mr. Robert wore a suit for the occasion, but Sophia noticed he'd pinned his janitor's name tag to his lapel. "This isn't about us," Sophia began the presentation. "It's about what happens when we stop seeing jobs and start seeing people, when we stop categorizing worth by titles and start measuring it by kindness." Mr. Robert took the microphone. "I was a principal for 30 years. I've been a janitor for 4. I've learned more about education in those 4 years than in the previous 30. Because I learned that real education happens in the margins, in the quiet moments, in the connections we forge when no one's watching." They presented their story together, taking turns, finishing each other's sentences sometimes, the comfort of their friendship evident in every interaction. The presentation included videos from Lincoln High, students with their mentors, Madison teaching Mrs. Chen's cooking class, the book club debating passionately. During the Q&A, someone asked Sophia what advice she'd give to students. "Look for the Mr. Roberts," she said simply. "They're everywhere. The bus driver who knows every kid's name, the lunch lady who asks about your day, the security guard who remembers your birthday. These people hold schools together. See them. Learn from them. They have more wisdom than any textbook." Someone asked Mr. Robert what changed him most about the experience. "I remembered that I wasn't finished," he said. "Grief had convinced me I was just waiting to die. Sophia convinced me I was still living. That's no small gift." The initiative launched in 100 schools that first year. By the second year, it was 1,000. Stories poured in from across the country. A student in Detroit who learned photography from the night security guard, a group in Austin who started a garden with the maintenance staff, a choir in Boston founded by students and cafeteria workers together. Madison Hayes, now at culinary school, sent Sophia a message. "You saved me from becoming someone I would have hated. Thank you for showing me there was another way to matter." 3 years after graduation, Sophia returned to Lincoln High for the dedication of the Robert Sullivan Library, a new wing funded by donations from alumni and community members who'd been touched by the story. Mr. Robert had protested the honor, but Dr. Sullivan and Sophia had overruled him. The ceremony was beautiful but simple. Students read passages from books Mr. Robert had recommended. The book club, now 50 members strong, performed a theatrical adaptation of a scene from The Great Gatsby. Madison, home for the event, catered with Mrs. Chen. But the moment that made everyone cry was when Mr. Robert stood to speak. "Libraries aren't about books," he said. "They're about possibility. Every book is a door, every story a bridge to understanding someone else's world. Sophia taught me that we can be those bridges for each other if we're brave enough to try." He looked at Sophia, now pursuing her doctorate in education, working on a dissertation about dignity and human connection in educational spaces. "This library isn't my legacy," he continued. "It's ours. Every person who chooses to see instead of assume, to connect instead of categorize, to share instead of hoard, you're all part of this story." After the ceremony, Sophia and Mr. Robert walked through the new library together. Students studied at tables, already making it their own. The walls were lined with quotes from their lunches together, moments captured and preserved. They stopped at a display case containing artifacts from their friendship, the wrapper from that first shared sandwich, photographs from book club meetings, the original handwritten sign-up sheet for the mentorship program, and a framed copy of the note Madison had left on Sophia's locker with a new note attached. "I was wrong. Forgiveness taught me more than fear ever could. M.H." "Did you imagine this?" Sophia asked. "When I sat down next to you that first day?" "No," Mr. Robert admitted. "I just thought I was having lunch with a nice girl who reminded me that kindness still existed. And I thought I was having lunch with a lonely man who might enjoy company." They stood together, looking at the display of their ordinary beginning that had led to extraordinary change. "Elena would be proud," Sophia said softly. "She is," Mr. Robert replied. "Somehow I know she is." 5 years passed. Sophia completed her doctorate and took a position at the Department of Education, overseeing the national expansion of the Connections program. Mr. Robert officially retired from janitorial work, but remained at Lincoln High as a volunteer advisor, running the book club and mentoring both students and staff. On a particularly meaningful day, they received word that the program had reached its millionth pairing. A student in rural Montana matched with a bus driver who'd driven the same route for 30 years. The student had been considering dropping out. The bus driver had been considering retirement. Together, they'd found reason to continue. Dr. Sullivan organized a celebration at Lincoln High. Alumni returned from across the country. The original book club members, now in college or careers, came back to share how those discussions had shaped their paths. Madison flew in from San Francisco, where she now ran a restaurant that employed formerly homeless individuals, teaching them culinary skills. During the celebration, a sophomore stood up nervously. "I have something to say," she announced. The room quieted. "I'm Sarah Chen, Mrs. Chen's granddaughter. 2 years ago, I was ready to give up. School felt pointless, people felt fake, everything felt hard. Then I heard about Sophia and Mr. Robert, about how they found friendship in the most unlikely place. So I started eating lunch with Mr. Tom, the new janitor. Turns out he used to be an engineer, lost his job, and took this one to support his family. He's been teaching me calculus in exchange for help with his English. We're both applying to community college next year, him to finish his recertification, me to start my journey." The room erupted in applause. Sarah continued, "I just wanted to say thank you for showing us that everyone has value, everyone has a story, everyone deserves to be seen." Sophia felt tears running down her face. Mr. Roberts squeezed her hand. Later, as the celebration wound down, they found themselves back in their old classroom, just the two of them. The sun was setting, painting everything in familiar golden hues. "I've been thinking about writing a book," Mr. Roberts said. "About all of this." "You should," Sophia encouraged. "Call it lunch lessons or something." He laughed. "Too cheesy. How about the janitor's doctorate?" "Perfect," she said. Then, more seriously, "Mr. Robert, can I tell you something?" "Always." "You saved me too. I was drowning in my own way, in expectations, in loneliness, in the pressure to be perfect. You taught me that being human was enough. That connection matters more than achievement." He was quiet for a moment. "We saved each other then." "We saved each other," she agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, two friends who'd found each other in the most ordinary of moments and created something extraordinary that rippled far beyond themselves. 10 years after that first shared sandwich, the impact was undeniable. The Connections program operated in all 50 states and 12 countries. Academic studies showed improved mental health outcomes, reduced dropout rates, and increased job satisfaction among support staff. But the numbers only told part of the story. The real story was in the thousands of small moments happening every day. A student in Seattle learning to play guitar from the night security guard, a group in Miami starting a multilingual newsletter with the ESL coordinator, a teenager in Phoenix discovering her love of architecture through conversations with the head of maintenance. Sophia, now Deputy Director of Student Well-Being at the Department of Education, kept every letter she received. Her office walls were covered with photos, students and staff members, unlikely pairs who'd found each other across the artificial boundaries that schools so often created. One autumn morning, she received a call that stopped her in her tracks. "Sophia?" It was Dr. Sullivan, and his voice was heavy. "Dad's in the hospital." She was on a plane within 2 hours. Mr. Robert had suffered a mild stroke while leading book club. The students had acted quickly, one calling 911 while another held his hand, whispering, "We're here, Mr. Robert. We're all here." When Sophia arrived at the hospital, she found his room packed with visitors, students, past and present, staff members, parents. The hallway was lined with cards, flowers, and books. So many books. Mr. Robert was awake, weak but alert. When he saw Sophia, his eyes filled with tears. "You came," he whispered. "Of course I came," she said, taking his hand. "We're family, remember?" He squeezed back, his grip still firm despite everything. The doctor explained that with therapy he'd make a strong recovery. But Mr. Robert would need to slow down, to rest more. The news felt like a punch to everyone who knew him. Mr. Robert had never been one to slow down. "I'll help," Sophia said immediately. "I'll take a leave of absence." "No," Mr. Robert said firmly, his voice stronger. "Your work is too important." "You're more important," she countered. "Sophia," he said, using what she'd always called his principal voice, "the best way to honor me is to keep doing what you're doing. Keep building bridges." Madison, who'd flown in from San Francisco, stepped forward. "I'll help. I'm opening a second restaurant location in Baltimore anyway. I can be here." Sarah Chen raised her hand. "The book club can take turns. We'll make sure he's never alone." Dr. Sullivan nodded. "And I'm not going anywhere." Looking around the room at all these people brought together by the simple act of sharing lunch, Sophia understood something profound. Mr. Robert hadn't just changed her life. He'd created a family of choice that transcended age, race, class, and every other barrier society tried to erect. During his recovery, the book club met in Mr. Robert's living room. Students would arrive after school, spreading out on his floor and furniture, reading aloud while he rested in his recliner. They were working through Don Quixote, and the parallels weren't lost on anyone. An old man tilting at windmills, except Mr. Robert's windmills had been real, and he'd actually moved them. One afternoon, a shy freshman named Marcus was reading when he stopped mid-sentence. Mr. Robert, why did you keep being a janitor even after everyone knew who you really were? Mr. Robert smiled. Who I really was? Marcus, I really was a janitor. I really am a janitor. That's not less than being a principal or having a doctorate. It's just different. The moment we start thinking some work is beneath us, we lose part of our humanity. But you could have done anything, Marcus pressed. I did do something, Mr. Robert replied. I maintained spaces where learning happened. I created clean, safe environments for growth. And most importantly, I was present, available, there for anyone who needed someone to see them. Sophia, visiting for the weekend, added, He taught me that dignity isn't about position, it's about purpose, and purpose can be found anywhere, in any role if you're open to it. As Mr. Robert grew stronger, he began writing his book with Sophia's help. They would sit together, him dictating, her typing, both remembering and reframing their shared history. The book wasn't just their story. It included dozens of accounts from across the country, testimonies to the power of unexpected connection. The manuscript was picked up by a major publisher, with proceeds going to fund the Connections program. But before it was released, Mr. Robert had one request. I want Madison to write the foreword, he said. Madison was stunned when she heard. Me? But I was horrible. You were hurt, Mr. Robert corrected. And you chose to heal. That's a story worth telling, too. Madison's foreword was raw and honest. She wrote about growing up in a home where worth was measured in achievements, where her father's position on the school board came with expectations she couldn't meet. She wrote about the fear that drove her cruelty, the desperate need to maintain a hierarchy that gave her some sense of control. I hated Sophia because she was free, Madison wrote. Free from the need to perform, free to be kind without calculating its return, free to see people as they were. I hated what I couldn't be. Mr. Ani. Robert and Sophia's friendship showed me another way to exist in the world. One based on genuine connection rather than strategic positioning. They didn't just forgive me. They invited me into their circle, teaching me that redemption isn't just possible. It's available to anyone willing to do the work. The book launched at Lincoln High in the Robert Sullivan Library. The event was standing room only. Mr. Robert, now walking with just a slight limp, stood at the podium with Sophia beside him. This book, he began, isn't important because of our story. It's important because our story is everyone's story. We all have the power to see each other, to reach across divides, to share our sandwiches, literal or metaphorical. A student raised her hand. What if people think we're weird for trying to connect with staff? Sophia took the microphone. Let them. I was weird. I'm still weird. But weird is just another word for brave enough to be different. And different is how change happens. The book tour that followed was unlike any publisher had seen. Instead of bookstores, they visited schools. Instead of readings, they held connection workshops. In Chicago, they brought together a group of students who'd been labeled at risk, with the custodial staff who worked nights. In Atlanta, they paired advanced placement students with cafeteria workers, breaking down academic elitism. In Los Angeles, they created partnerships between administrative staff and student council members. Each event ended the same way, with a shared meal. Nothing fancy, usually just sandwiches and cookies, but eaten together, barriers dissolving with each bite. One evening after an event in Portland, Sophia and Mr. Robert sat in a quiet diner, exhausted but exhilarated. Elena would be so proud of you, Sophia said, knowing he'd been thinking of his late wife all day. Portland had been one of their favorite cities to visit together. She'd be proud of us, he corrected. Then, more softly, you know, I used to think grief was about learning to live with absence. But you taught me it's about learning to see presence differently. Elena's here in every connection we help create, in every barrier we help break down. Sophia reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Tell me about the first time you knew you loved her. And he did. Stories flowing like they always had between them, the diner growing quiet around them as night deepened, their friendship a testament to the profound truth that love takes many forms, and all of them matter. The impact continued to ripple outward. Universities began studying the Connections program as a model for addressing inequality and mental health in educational settings. Corporations started implementing similar programs, pairing executives with maintenance staff, new hires with long-time security guards. The military adapted it, connecting recruits with civilian staff on bases. But it wasn't without challenges. There were schools where administrators resisted, fearing disruption of established hierarchies. There were parents who complained that their children were wasting time with irrelevant people. There were union concerns about exploitation, political pushback about social engineering. Sophia and Mr. Robert faced each criticism head-on, always returning to the same simple truth. Human connection wasn't political. It was essential. During one particularly contentious school board meeting in Texas, where parents were arguing against implementing the program, a senior named David stood up. "My dad killed himself last year," he said, the room going silent. He was a successful lawyer, had everything, but felt completely alone. "After he died, I started eating lunch with Mr. Jim, our janitor. Turns out his son had died by suicide 2 years ago. We've been helping each other heal. You want to tell me that's a waste of time? You want to tell me that maintaining your precious social boundaries is more important than saving lives?" The program was approved unanimously. As Mr. Robert entered his 80s, he began to slow down, though his mind remained sharp as ever. The book club evolved into a multi-generational reading society, with alumni joining virtually from around the world. Sophia, now with a family of her own, would bring her children to visit Grandpa Robert, and they would sit at his feet while he told stories about their mother, the brave girl who shared her sandwich. One spring day, sitting in the garden behind the center that still bore his name, Mr. Robert handed Sophia an envelope. "Don't open it now," he said. "It's for after." Sophia's throat tightened. "Don't talk like that." "I'm not being morbid," he said gently. "I'm being practical. I'm old, Sophia, wonderfully, gratefully old. I got to see our ripples become waves. Not everyone gets that gift." She tucked the envelope away, unable to speak. "I need you to promise me something," he continued. "Keep making it normal. The connecting, the seeing, the sharing. Make it so ordinary that future generations won't even understand why it was once revolutionary." "I promise," she whispered. 2 years later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Mr. Robert passed away peacefully in his sleep. He'd spent the previous day at the school, leading book club, sharing lunch with students, laughing at their terrible jokes. His last words to Dr. Sullivan had been, "Tell Sophia I kept my promise too." The funeral was unlike anything Lincoln High had ever seen. Thousands came. Students, teachers, janitors, principals, politicians, writers, activists. The service was held in the gymnasium because no church could hold the crowd. Instead of flowers, people brought books. Instead of a traditional service, people told stories. Madison, now a successful restaurateur and philanthropist, spoke about redemption. Dr. Sullivan spoke about fathers and sons and the courage to be vulnerable. Sarah Chen, now a teacher herself, spoke about how one man's willingness to be seen had saved countless others. But it was Sophia who gave the final eulogy. "Mr. Robert once told me that janitors know the real story of a school because they see everything. The tears in empty hallways, the forgotten lunches, the lonely kids eating alone. He saw me eating alone and decided to change that. Not because it was his job, not because anyone asked him to, but because that's who he was. He taught me that every person is a library of stories waiting to be opened. That dignity isn't granted by titles or positions, but claimed through how we treat each other. That the smallest acts of connection can reshape entire communities. He wouldn't want us to mourn him. He'd want us to continue, to keep sharing our sandwiches, to keep seeing the invisible, to keep proving that kindness isn't weakness, it's the strongest force in the universe. She paused, looking at the sea of faces, many crying, all connected by this one man's influence. So here's your homework. As Mr. Robert would say, this week, eat lunch with someone unexpected. Share your story with someone who might need to hear it. See someone who's been invisible. And when they ask why, tell them Mr. Robert sent you. After the service, Sophia finally opened the envelope he'd given her. Inside was a photo. The two of them from that very first lunch. Someone had captured it without their knowing. They were laughing, Sophia mid-bite of her sandwich, Mr. Robert's eyes crinkled with joy. On the back, in his careful handwriting, "My dearest Sophia, thank you for seeing me when I had forgotten how to see myself. Thank you for proving that angels sometimes come disguised as 17-year-olds with extra sandwiches. Thank you for being my friend. The compass I gave you points home. You became my home when I thought I'd never have one again. Keep building bridges. Keep sharing sandwiches. Keep reminding people that everyone matters. With all my love and gratitude, your friend always, Robert P.S. Check with Michael about the surprise." The surprise, it turned out, was a fully funded scholarship program Mr. Robert had secretly established using his book royalties and speaking fees. It was specifically for students who demonstrated exceptional kindness and connection building, regardless of their academic performance. The first recipient was Marcus, the shy freshman who'd asked why Mr. Robert stayed a janitor. 5 years after Mr. Robert's passing, the Connections program had become so embedded in American education that new teachers learned about it in their training. The Department of Education had made it a cornerstone of their mental health initiative. The suicide rate in participating schools had dropped by 30%. Bullying incidents decreased by half. Sophia, now Secretary of Education, kept Mr. Robert's photo on her desk. Every major decision she made, she asked herself, would this help someone feel seen? Madison had opened a chain of restaurants called The Shared Table, where people could eat for free if they shared a meal with a stranger. The walls were covered with photos of unlikely friendships that had formed over her food. Dr. Sullivan had retired but spent his time traveling to schools around the world, sharing his father's story and helping them implement their own versions of the program. He carried his father's janitor name tag in his pocket always. Sarah Chen had become principal of a school in Boston, where the first thing she did was eliminate separate eating areas for staff and students. "We're all learning together," she said. "We might as well eat together, too." On what would have been Mr. Robert's 90th birthday, Lincoln High held a celebration. The library bearing his name had been expanded, and a statue was unveiled in the courtyard, not of Mr. Robert alone, but of him and Sophia, sitting together, sharing a sandwich. The inscription read, "In memory of an unlikely friendship that taught us all how to see each other. May we never forget that everyone has a story worth hearing, a life worth valuing, and something worth sharing." Students rubbed the sandwich for luck before exams, a tradition that made Sophia laugh and cry simultaneously when she heard about it. That evening, Sophia stood in the empty classroom where they'd shared so many lunches. Her own daughter, Elena, named for Mr. Robert's wife, was starting at Lincoln High next year. She'd already announced her intention to eat lunch with the new janitor, Mr. Martinez, who'd just immigrated from Guatemala. "Mom," Elena had said, "Mr. Martinez looks like he has stories." Sophia smiled at the memory, touching the compass she still wore around her neck. It still didn't point north. It pointed toward connection, toward kindness, toward the revolutionary act of seeing people as they really are. The sun set through the same windows that had witnessed their friendship, casting the same golden light. And in that light, Sophia could almost see him. Mr. Robert, pushing his cart, smiling at her, asking if she had any extra cookies. "Always," she whispered to the empty room. "Always." The story of Sophia and Mr. Robert became legend, but more importantly, it became practice. Thousands of schools, millions of students, countless connections, all from one girl who decided to share her sandwich with a lonely janitor, not knowing she was sharing it with a former principal, not knowing he would share his wisdom with her, not knowing they would change the world. But perhaps that's how all change happens, not in grand gestures or calculated moves, but in simple moments of human recognition, in choosing to see, in deciding to share, in refusing to let artificial boundaries prevent real connection. The ripples continued, generation after generation. Students who'd been in Mr. Roberts' book club became teachers who created inclusive classrooms. Those who'd participated in the Connections program became leaders who valued every voice. The children who'd heard the story grew up believing that everyone mattered, and in schools across the country, in quiet corners and busy cafeterias, the revolution continued, one shared lunch at a time. Because Mr. Robert had been right. Dignity isn't granted, it's recognized. And once you learn to see it in others, once you help them see it in themselves, the world never looks the same again. Sophia kept her promise. She made connection so normal that her grandchildren couldn't imagine a world where students and janitors didn't eat together, where hierarchies mattered more than humanity, where people passed each other invisible and unseen. And somewhere, in whatever comes after this life, Robert Sullivan and his beloved Elena sat together, watching the beautiful chaos they'd helped create, knowing that their legacy wasn't in buildings or books or programs, but in the simple, radical act of seeing each other. The maintenance supervisor at Lincoln High, Mr. Martinez, still tells the story to new students, especially the ones who eat alone. He points to the statue, to the library, to the photos lining the walls. But mostly he shares his own lunch, sits down beside them and says, "Tell me your story." And the revolution continues. Because that's all it ever was. One person seeing another, one sandwich being shared, one moment of connection across an artificial divide. That's all it took to change everything. And it still works, every single time. The end. This story reminds us that true change doesn't require wealth or power or position. It requires only the courage to see others as they truly are, to reach across the barriers we've constructed, and to share what we have, whether it's a sandwich, a story, or simply our attention. Sophia and Mr. Roberts' friendship shows us that the most profound connections often come from the most unexpected places. That janitors and students, CEOs and security guards, teachers and cafeteria workers all have wisdom to share and loneliness to heal. It teaches us that dignity is not determined by job titles or social status, but by how we treat each other in the quiet moments when no one is watching. That kindness, especially when it expects nothing in return, has the power to transform not just individuals, but entire communities. The story affirms that every person contains multitudes, that the janitor might be a former principal, the quiet student might be a future leader, the bully might be crying for help, and the overlooked might be the ones who see everything. Most importantly, it reminds us that we all have the power to start our own revolution. We don't need permission to be kind. We don't need authority to create connection. We just need to see someone eating alone and have the courage to ask, "Would you like to sit together?" Because sometimes the smallest gesture, sharing a sandwich, can ripple outward to touch millions of lives. Sometimes the most ordinary moment can become the beginning of something extraordinary. And sometimes the person we think we're helping ends up saving us in return. In the end, Mr. Robert and Sophia's story isn't really about them. It's about all of us. It's a reminder that in a world that often feels disconnected and divided, connection is still possible. That in a society obsessed with hierarchies, True equality can be found in a shared meal. That in a time when people feel increasingly invisible, the simple act of being seen can be life-saving. The invitation is simple. Look around. Who in your world might need to be seen? Who might have stories to share? Who might be eating alone, waiting for someone to notice? Your Mr. Robert or your Sophia is out there waiting. All you have to do is share your sandwich.